Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Tech.Stron Women, where we feature amazing women doing amazing things in tech. I'm Jody Ashley, executive producer here at Tech.Stron, and I'm here with my co-host, Tracy Reagan, creator and CEO of Deploy Hub. Hey, Tracy, what's on your mind today?
So this is not new. It's news, but I find it sad. I was recently at a conference. I won't mention which conference it was. And I started acknowledging that there were a lot less women at that conference. I even went to an after party and there were 5 women amongst probably 70 men. It was awkward. It felt terrible. And I literally left. The whole show, though, it looked like something that from the late 90s, right? It didn't feel right to me. So I was speaking to some of the organizers about it, and one of the individuals told me this, and I had to go look it up, but Women Who Code is closing. This is an organization that's been around since 2011, and it is I think it's a slap in the face for women and for diversity. I was really, really very, very sad and shocked to see that Women Who Code is closing. And they're closing because they didn't get enough sponsorship. They didn't get enough money coming through the doors to keep them open. And for something that's been around so long and that led the way, I feel like it is an indication of what's happened. And not to go too long on this, but in a previous Tech.Stron Women, we spoke to a woman who worked for Manpower for quite some time. And she told us that during COVID, women really took a hit when it comes to technology. And many of the women left. And as we all know, technology changes so very fast. It's hard to get back into the marketplace if your skills are 4 years old. So I'm sad for that. I hope that something can be done. But I think that our guests today are going to have something to say about that, because it's not a good sign for women in tech.
Wow, that's really tough to hear. And I think we do have the right guests on to chat with about today. So I'm very excited to introduce to everyone Tanisha Martin and Nubia Shabaka. I think I said that right. And which one of you guys wants to go first? Tell us about yourself.
I can start. My name is Tanisha Martin. I am the executive director and founder of a nonprofit called Black Girls Hack. We are a cybersecurity focused organization that is in existence to help people be able to upskill and reskill in cybersecurity and in technology. Our organization is open to all. And I've definitely got some thoughts on this, but I will let Nubia introduce herself first.
I am Nubia Shabaka, and I am the Chief Cybersecurity Legal Officer, as well as Chief Privacy Officer at Adobe. So those are the 2 titles, but also I'm involved and I co-lead data governance generally, and also I'm involved in the core group of folks who handle AI governance from an internal perspective and making us more productive internally.
Wow.
And Nubia, you are a Harvard grad. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Law school, it seems so long ago, but it certainly got my start in getting in to be a tech lawyer. I took a class called Internet and Society, back when the internet was like brand new. And I thought, this is really where the future is, combining a great law degree with just the technical, digging into the technical know-how and expertise. 20-something years later, surprise, cyber and tech is a big thing. So yeah, I've been doing it a long time, and Harvard was a great training and stomping ground for some of the great minds in this tech space in law.
I can only imagine. I'm sure it was a really good starting place. Congrats to you to be able to go to that school. I would have loved to go to that school, but I definitely didn't have the chops. I can say that.
Beg to differ. We are at the same place on April 29th, 2024. So it doesn't matter.
Yes, it's true. Exactly.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about this, this horrible fact that Women Who Code is closing. They were founded in 2011. So this is not a new organization that's just trying to get a start. Tanisha, I would love to get your thoughts on it, considering, your background and the work you've done in this area.
Yeah, I actually was not familiar with the organization in terms of what it is that they do, but it came across my timeline on socials with a lot of people saying that they were super sad that it was closing, that they were heartbroken, and then when I read the press release saying hey, it was for financial reasons, I had so many questions because it seemed like the response on social media at least was very overwhelming in terms of like there were a lot of people who said, hey, they helped me get my first job. They helped me to be able to, get skills. They helped me when I was first starting out. And I actually put a post about this on LinkedIn because, as a nonprofit founder myself, I understand the struggle. I understand what goes into the very difficult decision, that, hey, financially, we're not staying afloat, right? I get that very much. But, my question was, if each one of these people who had said, hey, the organization helped me. They helped me get a job. They helped me to do all of these things. Did you donate? Did you volunteer? Did you go back to teach some classes? Did you sign up for, donation matching with your, employer? You know what I'm saying? Did you mentor? If people will use their collective voices and say, hey, this organization made a difference for me, then, one, I think that the organization will still be around because then, you have people who are pouring in with the two most important currencies that nonprofits operate off of, which are time and money, and I think that if the same way that people are upset when something bad happens, if they were proactive in terms of, hey, that organization helped me, I should give back to it, then I feel like it would be a different place. But right now, I think nonprofits are in a bad way, very much so. And I think part of that has to do with a shift in terms of donations for DEI efforts. That's been going on. And then I think also just because of the economic climate that we're in, the job market is not doing great right now. So I think giving in general is lacking.
Are there any federal funds available for organizations like yours?
There definitely are federal funds. I think that the problem is that the application process to apply for federal funds is very intensive. I've reached out to grant. I've reached out to grant makers, and I think one of the young women that I was speaking with, she was like, her rate is $250 an hour to generate a proposal to submit for these, and because there's a lot of, I don't want to say hoops because, I expect them to be responsible for, where they're putting their money. But there's a lot of hurdles along the racetrack that need to be jumped over in order for you to actually get to there. But there are monies out there. But also, I think that the reality is that, underrepresented nonprofits, so nonprofits that focus on women, minorities, people of color, any of the underrepresented communities, they tend to be underfunded compared to some of the other nonprofits, right? Because I know that there are some nonprofits out there who have crazy, ways where they actually pay the people who do the work for the nonprofit. I've heard it's a mythical place that exists. I just don't know about it yet. But it's a different situation, I think, depending on who is running the organization. They recently just put out, Giving Gap just put out a report recently that said that I think it was something like 90% less funding for general operations for Black founded nonprofits as opposed to any of the other ones. So it's interesting, I think the discrepancies in terms of giving, especially when it comes to organizations that are focused on underrepresented communities.
And maybe we're just seeing a shift in how it's done. Nubia, I know that Adobe has partnered with universities to establish cybersecurity internship programs. is diversity and inclusion being included in that process? Are we, or, how do those internships work, and do we look for in those internships women or people of color?
I mean, I also echo the concern with these non-for-profits closing. And so Adobe certainly partners with, Women in Cybersecurity, Executive Women's Forum. Obviously, happy to have worked with Black Girls Hack before. And so, our partnership, we're committed to expanding the cyber talent pipeline by providing hands-on cybersecurity career opportunities to students from marginalized communities. And so if, the number is less than 30% of women in cybersecurity, and the number is less than 10% in cybersecurity in the Black community, similar low numbers in other underrepresented groups. And so we have a summer program every year that invites very talented students, often from HBCUs and other underrepresented schools that have great cyber programs. So for example, we have a historic program with Bowie State, which is part of the National Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense Education. So these are top-notch students. I actually welcomed maybe last month, because it's not just the summer, we have a group of students right now working at Adobe during their school year to get additional hands-on expertise sitting in our security program. And I just recently welcomed them. And then as they go through that program, they learn essential skills and often get hired after they graduate to come back to Adobe. So it is just crucial that Adobe does its part in terms of the cybersecurity diverse pipeline.
And do they include mentorships in that? Is mentorship part of that process?
Yeah. So once the students are on board in terms of being an intern, and certainly throughout the year, many of our folks who have graduated from the programs in the past mentor them. I personally am available and often mentor folks. That we have one former student who actually sits a few feet from me here in New York. And then we also have a very big community in our Virginia office. And so there's definitely that partnership for mentors and making sure that they are seated in some of our Adobe offices that have cybersecurity senior folks, so that they have that grooming and they have the ability to answer questions and get the support that they need. Absolutely.
Oh boy, I know. Not that I think our education system is great. I'm just going to say that. I don't want anybody to think our education system is not great. But my experience with just about any of the disciplines in IT, that having a degree is just not enough. Tanisha, I know you have a master's in cybersecurity. Was that enough for you, or did you have to really work with? And did you really get your skills down after you went to work?
I think I'm probably the absolute worst person to ask. I actually have 5 master's degrees, and I'm currently working on a doctorate in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence.
Wow, you underachiever,
Nice.
you.
I know.
Wow,
So,
that's impressive.
The reason why I kept going back to school, I did a degree in one of my master's is in digital forensics, once in cybersecurity. And the reason why I kept going back is because I was not getting what I needed in terms of like hands-on skills. And that was part of the reason why I started Black Girls Hack. And I went to Johns Hopkins for my master's in cybersecurity. And then I have another master's in IT from Johns Hopkins. And then I have digital forensics with the University of Maryland, and then my undergraduate was from Carnegie Mellon, and it was in computer engineering. And I say all that to say is that, I had the technical skills, I have the ability to comprehend, obviously, but I wasn't getting it from any of the programs. I went through my entire program and they never mentioned, like, for example, a Cali box. They never mentioned, we talked very much so about theory and not so much practice. And I think that the problem is that there's a very big disconnect between what employers are looking for, especially in the offensive security space, which I operate. It's very much so different than what you're looking what the schools are actually teaching people to do, right? I can learn all about the CIA triad and all about, policies and procedures and all of those things, right? But for an ethical hacker, the expectation is that you have hands-on, lab skills, you have hands-on skills in, a variety of different operating systems, for example, and that's just not what they were teaching, when I did my master's in cybersecurity, many years ago. So the problem is, you've went and got your degree, maybe you did an undergrad, maybe you did a master's or two, right? And you don't have the skills that you need for employment in the field, right? So what do you do at that point? What options do you have at that point? Because, the whole reason why you go to school is to learn the skills that you need to be able to get a job, right? It's supposed to prepare you for the workforce. And I honestly, I don't think that that's what's happening right now. Which is why we have so many people who are looking for jobs. I think that the latest numbers I saw were something like maybe 4.5 million people are unemployed, but cybersecurity has like an almost zero unemployment rate. We've got so many people who are looking for jobs. We've got a few thousand members in BGH alone who are looking for jobs. But and there's a whole bunch of jobs open, but there's a disconnect between what they're looking for in the jobs and then what they're actually teaching. So the workforce is pretty much requiring that you, hey, go do your degree, but then after you're done, then you still have to go and get some hands-on skills that you don't necessarily get from school, right? So you'd have to get those yourself in like a home lab or something of that nature.
And the frustrating part is, honestly, none of us really have the cybersecurity thing down. Nobody is an expert in it.
It's evolving so quickly.
It's evolving. I mean, for example, the EU just started announcing their Cybersecurity Resilience Act. Now, Nubia, help me understand that. And, is there anything in that particular act that really, says this is what you need to do in your software lifecycle? This is what you should be doing on a daily basis to protect yourself. It feels there's some information in there, there's some direction in there, but I don't know how you prove any of it. What are your thoughts since you come from this cyber legal background?
Yeah, I mean, I think just the global, evolving, constant change to the laws. It's interesting because when you think about cybersecurity, we've been doing it so long here in the States. When you think about, obviously, the NIST cybersecurity framework, and then many of the laws that have passed coming from the financial services industry, which is my background, the most prescriptive cyber law, of which a lot of the EU has now been also putting it into practice, is with regard to something called the NYDFS cybersecurity law specifically. And so a lot of the standards, including the EU Cyber Resilience Act, is really trying to give standards and a framework, and it's really focused on incident reporting. Regulators around the world are really kind of fed up with all the incidents that have been happening for years and years and years. And so the concept of maybe a little bit of a backdoor, including with our recent US SEC cyber disclosure rule, is trying to uplift the skills that companies have by saying you need to disclose certain components and aspects. So whether or not they're saying you need to have appropriate multi-factor authentication, or you need to have appropriate encryption at rest and in transit, and all of the very specific mechanisms that they're trying to promulgate. The problem with that from a legal standpoint is technology moves way quicker than any law ever could. And so when I put on my technology and cyber specific hat, what we want regulators to do, and we are all for responsible innovation and cybersecurity, but we wanted to keep it risk-based and high enough that we don't have legislators really having these prescriptive standards that might be out of date and not the most secure way to protect society and customers and consumers a year from now. Legislation is just too long in the cybersecurity space to be that prescriptive and not have a risk-based assessment.
Well, we also have legislators who are like dinosaurs who don't even understand the technology. You see that in these hearings and these things that take place that they don't even get it. They don't know how to use it. They don't know how it works. yet they're legislating to people like you who do and are trying to make it safe and trying to bring us forward as quickly as possible. It's so frustrating to watch that. I can't imagine what it's like for you guys.
But the Biden administration has done some work in this area. They've put a pretty good team together, and I have worked with some of those folks, so I do know that. But even in the case of the executive order requiring software bill of materials, I even wrote a blog about it. It was called SBOM, so far so good, so what? If we're not consuming the data, there's very, I mean, okay, you have a text file that somebody could actually manipulate if they wanted to. It's just doesn't help and go far enough. And what we
Tracy's
sort of
obsessed with S-bombs. Just to get it out there, it always comes up in every interview we do.
It's such a critical piece because it shows the software supply chain in the cybersecurity process. Now, what I really want to talk about with Tanisha is let's put cybersecurity and AI together. Where is that going? Because you obviously have thought about this. You're specializing in it. You're studying it. Help us out. Give us a roadmap.
When I look at the research so far, and I'm basically a year in to my dissertation, and when I look at the research, what I'm seeing is that there are a lot of use cases and a lot of research that's being done for defensive security. So how do we identify that the breach has occurred? How do we, basically become more effective as defenders? What I'm not seeing in the research is a lot of things that are focused on offensive security applications, right? And the problem that I have with this, just from a conceptual standpoint, is that, our adversaries are basically using AI today to be able to, for offensive capabilities, for offensive attacks, for, advanced, for example, phishing campaigns, or for, advanced malware, for example. They're having AI systems basically use these things for these purposes, right? And we're not currently doing that. There are a lot of, roadblocks in terms of, guardrails that are in place to help prevent you from being able to do certain things with, a lot of the GPT systems that are out here today, right? And realistically, we're not looking at how to use them for offensive security. And, to, I think, Newbie and your point about, legislation takes a long time. It tends to trail very much behind industry. Education is the exact same way, right? And the problem is that we're not currently teaching AI for the most part in schools. We're not teaching it in, there's not a lot of specialized programs that are focused specifically on AI, right? And the problem is going to be that we're going to end up being very behind when it comes to the capabilities in terms of what we're able to do. You have countries like France who basically recently came out with a national AI policy, which basically said, hey, we're going to focus on one, from a legislative perspective, but we're also going to put money towards, the education and training piece to, elementary, high school, college schools, so that, we can make sure that we have a pipeline of professionals that are able to feed into the workforce, as time comes. And I think that we are lacking that in the United States. And I think that it probably needs to come from the top, and, it needs to be something that the one of the administrations puts out in order for us to be able to effectively use these systems. Because, realistically, when we're looking at them, there's a lot of possibilities, but at the same time, like, there are some very concerning things, like the bias that has to do with them. If you ask, one of the ChatGPT, or not ChatGPT, but the ones that do the visuals, like, what do juvenile defenders look like? All of the pictures that they will draw you are young Black children. It can't even conceptualize, that there are, juvenile offenders that are not Black, for example, or the fact that I think it's something like 30% error rates when it comes to artificial intelligence systems looking at Black women's faces. Error rates like that are problematic to me. And, most people are full speed ahead in terms of, putting out their AI capabilities, without concern to, issues like that, the bias, and or ethical concerns, for example.
Bias in, bias out, right?
Isn't the number for men even higher for Black men for AI?
I have not seen. I
Like
saw
facial recognition software.
I saw that it was 35% for
higher.
Black women. I didn't see what it was for. I thought that was the highest one, but also I'm a Black woman, so that's probably why I was like, I'm not trying to go to jail because you can't tell my face.
I just know it's horrible. They think this is some great new technology, but once again, it totally discriminates. It's like, what are we doing?
What's so crazy is the meeting that I had right before this was our AI ethics review board here at Adobe. And so obviously Adobe produces its own AI. We develop and deploy Firefly, and we take discrimination bias very seriously. And as part of our art philosophy, accountability, responsibility, and transparency in developing AI, the debiasing component is really, really important to us. So, elements that happen in the raw versus what output you get in terms of trying to reflect reality and making sure that when you search for lawyers, you do not get all Caucasian middle-aged men. If you were to search on our platform, to Tanisha's point, is really, really critical. So I would venture to guess, Tanisha, that if you did that search on Adobe Firefly, you would certainly not get all, Black folks, because we understand the importance of representing society and having that debiasing element be part of how we choose to show up in society as Adobe and what message we want to relay.
And I want to tell you guys, I do not work for Adobe, but I am a very big fan of theirs. So when I say this, it is not an ad and I'm not getting paid. But I can actually do what it is that she's saying. I can actually check the Firefly because Adobe actually provides to our organization the software for us to be able to do all of the things. And they donate that to us so we can be able to use those tools and those advancements. So we're able to do some amazing things with Adobe tools. And like I said, I'm not getting paid from them. So like this was not planned in any way.
This is not a paid announcement.
Not at all. But I am a big fan of organizations that, are trying to be intentional about removing bias and then also making technology accessible, right? So, I very much so appreciate that. That's one of the reasons why, I was like, hey, let's do this because, I don't like performative acts of, hey, support, I'm saying like, oh, well, we support you, but, we can't help you as far as donations. We can't help you as far as, licensing or software or any of those things. And, Adobe is absolutely amazing, not just for, I think Black Girls Hack, but I've also participated with them in some events at Bowie State. And so, they're actually on the ground with the students, which I appreciate because they're actually trying to make a difference.
Well, we just need to get more diverse people building these large language models so there's less bias going in and less comes out. Because it's hard. It's really, really hard to deculture people, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard. I don't want to believe, and I'm always an optimist, I don't want to believe that anybody ever does it on purpose. And this is the problem. This is the part of the problem, our unrecognized racism that we can't see ourselves because we've been in it for so long. And then when we go to work on these systems, and especially if you're actually creating these LLMs, the bias is just there. It's a huge problem. It really, really is.
Yeah, I think that the part of the problem is that when we look at the data that goes into these systems, right, a lot of folks are making their AI applications, available to folks, but not necessarily the data that is used to train them, right? And I think that when we look at that data, that's where the problem lies, right? If you, for example, have a place where they, it's a largely minority population and the police are, have a heavy presence, right? They're going to have, of course, more arrests, more crime, whatever. So, when you look at those numbers, it's going to say, hey, this place is a largely Black location and there's a lot of crime. So therefore, Black people commit all of the crime, right? And, when you therefore then put that data into the system and you say, hey, AI, what do you think about this? It's going to say, well, hey, based on the numbers, Black people create all the crimes. So, they're more likely to, for recidivism, they're more likely to recommit crimes to go, so to your point, garbage in, garbage out. We need to do better about, improving the data that are being used to train these LLMs. But I think in order for us to do that, we need to get more people of color into the research, into the education space, so that they can start training on these things, so they can, get to the point where they're able to impact the algorithms, impact the data, I'm saying downstream. Because the way that it is right now, I think that there was one of the big AI companies did like a group photo, and it was like playing Where's Waldo, trying to identify a person that was not a white man. And if that's what the future of AI looks like, then we're going to continue to have a lot of these issues of bias and discrimination that are basically baked in all the different applications that these things are being used for. Which
we have a lot of work to do, Tanisha. We have a lot of work to do to achieve this, but you're working on it. So before we run out of time, I want you to tell us about,
we've got
I want her to, yes, I want you really to tell people how to get into about Black Girls Hack.
Yes.
And I want you to let people, if they know young women who they believe have the skills, they're great in math, but they would have never thought about going into computer science. How do they get involved?
So one, everybody's Black Girls Hack is open to everybody. We have no requirements that you be a Black woman in order to join the organization. So we literally train hackers of everything under the rainbow. So the organization is open. Our website is blackgirlshack.org. And we have study groups for people who are trying to get specific certifications. We have training programs. We have a 0 to OSCP, which is our red team training program. We've got the blue team version of that. We are actually about to roll out an AI and a GRC version of those 0 to hero style training programs that generally last about a year or so. And they're open to all. We're also applying for funding to be able to support these programs because, again, we're not able to do these things without, money and funding. So we've been applying for a whole bunch of grants to try to get these programs covered so that we can get more offensive, defensive, whatever security professionals out here. But I just wanted to reiterate that, it's open to everybody and you don't have to feel like you're, I'm not a Black girl. Can I join? Absolutely. Because I get so many questions like that from people who are saying, hey, I'm a cis white male and can I come? And I'm like, I don't know why all that matters, but, come on. Everybody is welcome. So,
and the more diversity in these kinds of groups, the better, no doubt.
I agree. I think that's super important. And I think that, also, we've seen from a business standpoint that, companies that have more diversity have better financial outcomes. They have better business outcomes. So, there's a lot of, I think, benefits to having more diversity. And I know that it's been, an attack on, DEI practices and, trying to focus on diversity. But I think it's important that we continue to try to do, make our cybersecurity technology industries more diverse because it's going to be important for us, the future of what we're trying to do.
So you were talking earlier about supporting kids that are upcoming people, but, kids in general that are in college and giving them tools. So when they get their education, they can actually get a job. Do you have a lot of kids that are doing this as part of college? Like they're finding this as, kids do internships, things like that. Is this something that they do in addition to their education to get those skills like you were talking about? This is a conversation that I produce a lot of content for Tech.Stron, and this comes up a lot across tech that people the schools aren't teaching them what they need to know to do the job when they leave, regardless of whether it's security or anything, So is this help support that? And are there other ways that you know of that these kids can get more support to do that?
Yeah, they need, they're not getting what they need, I think, within the school systems themselves. I think that's pretty much the case across the board. But I think that what's important is that, we reduce the financial barriers to entry. There's no way to get around the fact that they're basically going to have to work on whatever they're doing for school, but then also, work on the labs, unless that's incorporated in their curriculum, which is not as of right now. So I think it is important that they get those hands-on skills, but there's no way to sugarcoat the fact that it's going to take extra time, and it's usually outside of whatever they're doing for school or their internships, right? But the thing about it is that, when they have those skills and they actually get those skills and they're practicing them, then they're able to actually go out and get jobs. I always use the analogy, like, are you in the gym? If you're not in the gym practicing your skills, then, you're not going to get better. And be able to move forward. And I think Newbie was actually trying to say something a moment ago.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No worries. I was just going to say, as a practical interim step before we get to the future of having a ton more diversity, to Tanisha's point, in the coding, in the cybersecurity space, in the AI development, I think it's really critical that we, at a minimum, have a diverse landscape cross-functionally and diverse from subject matter expertise in reviewing the systems that are being developed and the output, even if you are not directly developing it, right? What I was just saying around Adobe, I'm not sitting down coding with my fingers, but certainly can provide a diverse perspective before we put any product or service out the door to make sure that they thought about those things that could impact women and people who are minorities. Not a replacement, but until you get there, don't do nothing, do something as an interim step. And also the concept that learning on the job applies to cybersecurity technical and applies to cybersecurity law. Like, no matter what class you take in law school, or privacy, which we also do on my team, if you just graduate and say, I took 5 classes on privacy, the training, there's no substitute for the hands-on training in an actual cybersecurity incident, in a privacy incident, what to do and how to incorporate that in real life. And so join organizations, volunteer, get a mentor, do whatever you can to get that practical experience. Join companies like Adobe that give those opportunities because you need it to get your first job. So who's going to give you that internship so you can get your first job?
Right. And cybersecurity is such a big space right now. It's such a good field to go into. AI and cybersecurity together are going to be an amazing kind of cross-functional job, because we're not going to be able to we can't static code analysis our way out of cyber problems. We just can't. And I'm going to put a plug out there for open source projects. In the US, I run an open source project. It's incubating in the Linux Foundation, and I have to actively go out and recruit women. But it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter what you call yourself, it really doesn't. She, they, him. Getting involved in an open source community is really, really helpful, because you are actually acting as if you're working for a regular old company. You've got pull requests to manage, you've got project schedules to manage, you have DevOps people, you have security officers. And it's an extremely good way to get to really learn just about any aspect of software development. So for those of you out there who are thinking, I'd like to be able to do even more open source projects, and we don't take advantage of them in the US like they do in India. I'm telling you right now, and in India, they even have programs as part of their university where they can get credit for being a part of an open source community and doing so many pull requests. Wow. It's like an internship, but not, right?
Yeah, I think that people, tend to sleep on, the options that they have to try to get a work experience. Open source is definitely an amazing way to go. Volunteering is a way to go. Putting together, portfolios and working on like home labs. I've seen people who've been able to basically, articulate the things that they're doing within their portfolio in interviews or within, the job process, and being able to get jobs just based off of that. You have to be able to start somewhere. And realistically, if you just do nothing else outside of, going to school, I don't think that you're going to be prepared, especially if you get into the more, some of the more technical areas of technology and cybersecurity. So, I think that technology and cyber are not one of those things where it's like, hey, I learned everything I needed to learn in school and I'm done now. I'm good to go. I just go and, go forth and conquer. It's things are changing on a daily basis. So I think it's important that you stay up and how do you do that? I think you put yourself in communities. There are a lot of different like meetups. There's a lot of organizations that do cybersecurity technology related things. There's nonprofits. There's so many different support groups. But I think regardless of whatever it is that you're trying to do, that you don't do it alone. I think it's important that you have a community to help to bounce ideas off of, just to let you know what's possible, so that you're not just limited to the knowledge that you have.
100%. So I always like to ask this question. There's two questions. I'm going to have you answer them both. We'll start with Nubia. Who influenced you to become technical? Was there somebody in your life who said, this is a direction you should go? And you may have said, I don't see myself that way, but they pushed you. And secondly, is there a favorite book that we should all read?
So my husband used to be the head of technology for a not-for-profit for many, many, many years. And I've known my husband since I was 5 years of age. And so he's very technical. And then the first CISO that I worked hand in hand with when I was on Wall Street, now I'm in Silicon Valley, still in New York, but just understanding way back early 2000s, the concept of you're in every technical meeting, you're in all of the drawings and designs and strategies, and just understanding from the ground up, having that friend as a CISO, which is just a critical relationship. Back in the day before they were called cyber lawyers, was really critical to just excel in the area, to become really, really technical and speak the language, right? I mean, right now I have engineers on my team, which many lawyers do not, right? In running privacy related engineering. And so being able to translate laws into technical components and aspects and having those requirements documents, I've done my whole career, I guess in part to first CISO and a little bit in part to my husband.
That is so sweet. I love that answer. I really do.
And so no specific book. What's on my bookshelf right now is just every AI book. Every time I speak, like literally every time I speak on a panel or go somewhere, AI is obviously, we're in the era of AI. And it seems like every week there's another AI book that makes it to the top of my list. So no specific must read.
But AI is on the top of the list right now.
Absolutely.
I should be reading more books on AI. There is no doubt. Tanisha?
So for me, when I was getting ready to go to school, like my father was a software engineer. And so he was like, you need to go and be a programmer. And I decided that I was going to do anything except be a programmer, just because that's what he wanted, because I was very big on my oppositional defiance. So I literally went to school. I majored in electrical and computer engineering so that I could learn how to terrorize programmers of the world, like my father. So for the very, probably first 10, 15 years of my career, I was doing software testing and breaking software just as a, like, I don't want to actually make it. I just want to tell you why you're doing a horrible job. And then that's basically extended over into, penetration testing and ethical hacking, because again, I'm just breaking the software of the world. So that for me was my motivation to become more technical, is just so that I could terrorize, folks like my dad. I probably need some therapy about that, but it'll be fine. And I actually have like 14 co-authors, but we actually just came up. We released a book in October of last year. It's called Securing Our Future, Embracing the Resilience and Brilliance of Black Women in Cybersecurity. So there's 15 of us that put the book. It's available out on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. What I love about the book is the fact that you hear 15 different women's perspectives of how they got into the industry. Some of them are in privacy. Some of them are like Nubia, bad A, lawyer, cybersecurity women who are amazing. But overall, you have people who come from so many different places with so many different stories that I think can relate to so many people. So if you're an underrepresented, community within cybersecurity, I think you should definitely check that book out. But then also, like Nubia said, anything AI, because realistically, I think that and, quantum computing are probably the future of what we're looking at this point.
Oh boy, don't get Tracy started on quantum computing or we'll be here for another hour.
I'm sorry.
It's so true. I am a believer in quantum. It's just going to be a few little tweaks and we will be there. And then we really will have the ability to do AI and not just GPUs.
Well, ladies, we've been going. This was amazing. I think we could do another hour. You guys are I'm just blown away by your backgrounds and your education, and you guys are so impressive. I'm so excited that we got to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. And Tracy, I don't know. I'm very excited that we got to do this interview today.
100%. It's so much fun to be in presence of pure geek girls. It's just, that's what you guys are. You're geek girls.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Great.
I am grateful to have been invited. I just want to also do a brief shout out for, we're having a conference in August. It is called SquadCon, and it's during Hacker Summer Camp. And SquadCon is 2 days, also sponsored by Adobe and some other folks as well. So that's amazing. But it is to see more underrepresented folks in the industry. So we have talks on a lot of amazing different things. Last year, I think it was something like 75% of our speakers were women. So that was absolutely amazing. So we're doing it again this year, and it'll be August 7th and 8th in Las Vegas.
Amazing. Well, we will make sure we get that in.
Sounds like fun, actually. I might put it on my calendar.
You should. We have an absolute ball.
I bet.
Well, thanks again. We really appreciate you guys being here. Everyone in our audience, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tech.Strong Women. We'll have another one coming up in a couple weeks, but thanks for being with us today. And as always, stay tuned to techstrong.tv for more amazing programming. Have a great day.